And for breweries and wineries, the indoor capacity of 50% or 200, whichever is fewer. There is still a 75% capacity cap at grocery and retail stores, but it's been manageable. I don't know about many of you, but I'm not seeing lines outside of Trader Joe's anymore, which tells me that we are getting back to some bit of normalcy. Shopping malls, common areas can reopen with modification, which includes the food areas which were closed. And we are definitely trending in the right direction. And even better, the governor has said that on June 15th, California will fully reopen as long as we meet two criteria. The first is for us to have sufficient vaccine supply, check that box. And the second criteria is for our hospital capacity to remain stable, check that box. We both those categories, we are in very good shape. We are eagerly awaiting this proposed full reopening in June. However, we still have more details to get from the state, but I can tell you that we are going to align with the state if it's the last thing I do in this county. And on two other good news notes, the county has distributed more than 8 million doses of the vaccine. Of these, more than 3 million were second doses. These vaccination numbers are remarkable and are a testament to the great partnerships we have developed with many cities to set up vaccination clinics and mobile vaccination units throughout the entire county. However, we are seeing a significant decrease in demand for the vaccine, and know this is due in part to the vaccine hesitancy as well as the inconvenience. We are now trying other efforts to facilitate the distribution of the vaccine and are constantly encouraging more residents to get vaccinated. We have a robust mobile vaccine program where we can send teams to any area or event to give out the vaccine on site without an appointment. So if you know of any events or workplaces in your community that might be interested in a mobile vaccination unit, please let my staff know, and we will coordinate it and make sure that someone is on site for you. So really quickly, I want to touch on the county's economic recovery efforts, something that I started right at the beginning of the pandemic. I helped establish a small business concierge service under the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. This service provides businesses with a one-stop shop to apply for assistance at the federal, state, and local level. Through the small business concierge service, we have been able to provide many successful grant and loan programs targeted to businesses that were forced to close down due to the health officer orders. The county is in the midst of budget deliberations, and as part of the county's budget, I have asked that we ensure that the influx of federal dollars received to help us respond to COVID-19 go directly to businesses most impacted by the pandemic. I want to make sure that we don't begin to grow government and leave the private sector out in the cold. It's important for us to share the federal dollars that are coming in to help all of us toward recovery. So with that, I look forward to taking your questions at the end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Barger, for that very encouraging opening comment. Our next speaker is going to be Mike Cologna. Mike?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Mike has 40 years of experience in the hospitality industry. Mike Cologna is president and CEO of one of Southern California's most iconic family diners. Can you think of the name? Norm's, of course. Cologna traveled between coasts for 26 years, holding high-level positions and playing significant roles in the success of major restaurants such as Burger King, Fats Cafe, Bertucci's, and Boston Market. In 2014, Cologna and his wife of over 35 years permanently relocated to Long Beach, California, where he took his current position as president and CEO of Norm's. Under his leadership, Norm's has expanded from 17 locations in 2014 to 20 current locations, with many more from what we were discussing earlier expected in the future. Mike, you now have 10 minutes to tell us about how Norm's got through the pandemic and what the outlook looks like for Norm's going forward.
Okay, thanks everyone. I really appreciate the invite and participating in this discussion. And I think groups like this do make a difference. So hopefully today we can add some value. I think if everybody thinks back to March 15th last year, 2020, that was the Sunday before St. Patty's Day, when we shut down. And frankly, there was a cause for concern because that weekend there was a lot of people out enjoying the pre-St. Patty's Day weekend. And the government, whether the federal, the state, the county, or the cities, took action to try to protect us. So I think that's the foundation. But back then it was remember bend the curve for a couple weeks. So it doesn't mean we didn't know how to deal with this, but we didn't know the significance of this pandemic. And that to me has been the most difficult thing in terms of the first phase for us was survival, because we couldn't predict the future. And if you look at a timeline of that year, to go only, we can have partial dining rooms, and then we have patios, and then came the summer and there was some unrest and conflict and we got shut down again, and then we opened up again. And then right before Thanksgiving, unfortunately, the decision was made, or fortunately, I should say, to keep people safe. This decision was made to really shut down the entire dining room and patio areas and just go to go again until recently. So survival was the first step. And survival in any business, retail or restaurant, is how do you build sales or maintain some kind of sales, and how do you control or cut costs? Because cash is king. Our biggest efforts were placed on never closing every restaurant fully, trying to maintain employment for as many staff members as possible. We kept on every manager. We did furlough because of the reduction in the business. And, we went from our peak to about 1,900 or 2,000 employees down to about 300. We're back up to about 900 right now. So keeping ourselves relevant, giving back to the community, as well as trying to keep people employed, was significant, with one priority only, keeping everybody safe. And that included the guests. We don't use the word customers at Norms. We use the word guests because that's kind of a, I think it has a different meaning, and we treat them as guests, and we wanted to keep the guests and the team safe. So that was it, survival. Running a restaurant when you can't see people in your dining room, as my daughter once told me about 4 months ago, is got to be pretty tough. It is. It's kind of shifted a little bit now, because running a restaurant when you can't hire enough staff for numerous reasons is tough, but it will get better, and I'm pretty optimistic about it. So optimism, yellow tier, Disney opening, June 15th is the quote unquote open up California date. We got to get the kids back to school. I am so crystal clear in my mind that society will get a better normalization if our children or grandchildren go back to school. So what are we doing now? We're trying to stabilize our 20 restaurants. We have a great restaurant in Encino, yay, that's built and paid for, and we're starting to staff that up, as well as Rialto. We have some other leases that we want to look at. So we want to grow, but we have to keep the core business safe and sound and stable. Biggest problem with that is we have some bills to pay, and I think everybody does, especially landlords. You have all these variable costs that are easier to control, but you have these fixed costs like rent and property taxes that really puts the burden on the margins in the hospitality industry. So we've worked very well with all our landlords. We're in great shape, and we'll be moving forward. We tried to give back to the community with promotions of grocery promotions, free bacon, free eggs, flowers for Mother's Day last year, and all these things that we thought were important. One of the promotions, yuck, had free toilet paper, and but that's what was needed, because you couldn't go into a grocery store without feeling uncomfortable or finding an empty shelf. So we became a grocery store for almost 2 months, similar to other restaurants that converted their branding, continued to change, and added delivery and off-premise catering, that type of thing. So we're very optimistic, and I think we're going to have a good third quarter, and I think a great fourth quarter is how I see this thing. Let's keep our fingers crossed as far as be safe, vaccinate, and I think we'll keep the flu season under control, because that could muddy people's perceptions. But I think things are so positive right now.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Does that conclude your comments?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Rachel Michelin. She's president of the California Retailers Association. As president, Rachel Michelin is the leading voice for retailers at the state capitol and at city halls across California. Rachel comes from a background in nonprofit management, having previously served as CEO of California Women Lead, and is a governor's appointee on the State Board of Optometry. Rachel will be discussing the state of affairs in the retail sector and how the industry will bounce back. Rachel, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Gosh, listening to Mike, he kind of gave a lot of my remarks. He hit a lot of the things that I think is very similar in the retail industry. As I look back, I think back to that first date, and it literally felt like a tidal wave had hit, right? I mean, felt like I was drinking out of 5 different fire hoses. I didn't know where to look. And what struck me was the resilience of retailers, particularly our small retailers up and down the state of California. I was amazed at how quickly they use social media, Instagram, Facebook, in order to sell their goods, how quickly they were able to get up websites and be able to really develop those relationships they had with their communities in order to stay open. And it was tough. I mean, none of us knew what was happening. We were all at home for the most part. I represent a number of grocery stores. They were trying to figure out what this meant. How do we protect our employees? How do we protect our consumers? To Mike's point, I can't wait to read the book on the toilet paper and why that was such a big issue when we first went into kind of the stay-at-home order. But it was really an interesting time. And I was struck by not only the how these small businesses were adapting, but watching our local elected officials and how they were reacting to what was going on. We have a lot to look back on and to be proud about. I am proud how the retail industry stepped up. Even the stores that were deemed non-essential, they had to close their doors. They were making face masks. They were donating goods. They were, we had essential stores like our grocery stores who were hiring from the hospitality sector to make sure people had jobs. We saw an expansion of curbside pickup. We saw an expansion of delivery to people's homes. Those are things that I think are not going away. I think you're going to continue to see delivery services booming in the state of California. There are so many small, new venture capital firms that are starting delivery services. I've been contacted by a number of them. I think that will continue. I think you'll continue to see curbside pickup for groceries and other goods and services. The other thing that struck me during this whole period of time was working with local chambers of commerce throughout the state and the innovation that they brought. Things that I hope don't go away. As an example, closing down streets and having the restaurants and the retail being able to commingle together and bring people outside. And really, we're so fortunate in most parts of California, particularly in Southern California with the weather, where we can really promote that. I hope that we continue to see that. And really that sense of community that we saw during COVID. It was frustrating. I think I got frustrated. I think at one point I had a spreadsheet of 700 different ordinances affecting retail from across the state of California. It was very challenging to keep track of everything. Every county was doing things differently, and it was very hard for business owners to stay up to speed on everything going on. But we did it. And I think going forward, we realized that we have to do a better job of telling the retail story. I think there's some challenges that we're going to see in the next couple of months. I think Mike hit on a couple. I mean, one of the things we're hearing a lot is staffing shortages and making sure we get people back to work. And how do we really build up these industries that have been shut down for so long? So many of us are looking forward to June 15th. Trust me, I have that date circled in red on my calendar because I'm so looking for the day that we can really open up fully California's economy. And that's because a lot of businesses have stepped up. We've pushed to the vaccine. We continue to push making sure people get vaccinated against COVID. We're taking the precautions needed to protect people from spreading COVID, and we're seeing that hard work paying off. I mean, I remember months ago, we talked about LA County, and I think there were some of us that thought, wow, we didn't think LA County would get to the yellow tier. And now LA County is leading the state, frankly, in terms of their positivity rates and their vaccine distribution, and something to be very proud of. So I think you're going to see things changing going forward for retail. I think retailers, large and small, are going to have to adopt their business models. I think sometimes you need a disruptive thing like COVID in order to take a really good look at your business and see what worked and what didn't, make those changes moving forward. But I think as a retail community across the state, large and small, we're working really hard to make sure our retailers have everything they need to be successful. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about June 15th. And we are already working. I represent a number of the retail pharmacies in the state. We're ready for the booster shot we know is coming in the fall. We want to make sure that we get that out as quickly as possible so that we don't see a shutdown again of our economy. And like Mike, we are hoping that we continue to promote good health practices so that we're not hit with the flu season and we can continue to grow the economy. I'm just as optimistic as everyone else, and I look forward to having a conversation with all of you on some of these innovative ideas that we'll see moving forward and some of the positive things that can come out of the COVID pandemic.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Gosh, it was so wonderful to have such a diverse panel today, the three of you. Let's give them a wonderful round of applause. So thank you, Rachel, Supervisor, and Mike. Appreciate you being here today. But we're not done yet. We have prepared questions for each of our three panelists. And I just want to remind everybody, if you're not on mute, if you're not one of the speakers, please be sure you're on mute so we don't get background noise in. I'd like to start with our supervisor for the first question. And the question is, restaurants are experiencing great challenges bringing back employees. The combination of unemployment, childcare needs, and the uncertainty of future closures have perpetuated all of this. Are there supportive solutions that are being discussed by the board to aid businesses in bringing back employees?
That is a tough question. And I know Michael talked about how hard it is to find, and Rachel talked about how hard it is to find qualified, not even qualified at this point, people that are willing to come back to work. I've spoken to a number of businesses who have expressed frustration with the inability to hire workers, including some very close friends of mine who own restaurants. I've advocated to support businesses through direct funding relief in the form of tax forgiveness, fee abatement, which is something I'm going to continue to fight for, or even direct grants for employee retention. Additionally, I'm pushing to allocate funding to educate business owners on steps on how to recover after the pandemic, because not all restaurants have someone like Michael at the helm that can really navigate some of the issues that are going to come forward in the months to come. I would also encourage businesses to seek out any available grant opportunities are out there. And as we get the federal dollars, my, again, push is to make sure we get the money back out into the businesses, especially the small retail and restaurants that need it the most. For example, the Small Business Administration has an economic injury disaster loan for businesses, private nonprofits, homeowners, and renters. Employers who may unfortunately be planning a closure or major layoff can get help through the Los Angeles County America's Job Center of California. Through the Rapid Response Center, specialized representatives can help prevent layoffs. They can also provide information about unemployment benefits, Trade Adjustment Assistance Act benefits, COBRA benefits is something that no one thinks about in terms of healthcare, and reemployment services that are available. But the one thing I'll say, and I would love to hear from Michael and Rachel, is we've got to recognize that as long as we have the stimulus money coming in that's more than they would get in a paycheck, you're competing with the government. And so we've got to look at how to balance the need to help get money into people's pocket with the fact that we may have unintended consequences of the very actions that are being taken that we think are helping people when in fact it's hurting the economy and it's really not helping the people.
Yeah, Mike and Rachel, do either one of you want to comment on Supervisors' comment about bringing people back with them being paid?
Yeah,
you go first.
Go ahead, Mike. Okay,
You
you're
go first.
absolutely right. you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there was a McDonald's that was offering $50 just to come in and apply for a job. You're seeing retailers and restaurants offering well above minimum wage to get workers coming in. I think the other issue that we're not talking about that I think is going to affect LA County is we're having problems with the supply chain, with the ports, and having people coming in and filling those positions. And if you don't have the ports working and the supply chain and the logistical system in California working, that affects everyone. It includes someone like Mike who needs his food in order to keep his restaurants open. It affects a small business, a retailer who needs to have things on their shelf to sell. It affects even if you have an online marketplace, you need to be able to have things that you can get to your consumers. So you're absolutely right. I don't know what the answer is. It seems like everything is just throwing money and not really looking at the problem. And I think it's the second wave that's affecting our small businesses in California, and not just California, it's national. But in California, is that these small businesses, whether it's a restaurant or a retailer, were at limited capacity or closed. And now that they're open, great, except now you have to have people who can work. And I've seen some restaurants who are closing to minimal hours because they just don't have the people to work. So you're absolutely right. And I think we have to figure out how to solve that problem.
Mike?
No, I agree with everything that's being said. You know, I think there's confusion sometimes between what is stimulus and what is subsidy. And I think we just have to get clear on that, you know, in terms of how to help businesses, you know, whether it's the PPP or the Restaurant Relief Fund, from my perspective, that can assist businesses for a period of time until we can get back to open to a level. And, you know, the margins in retail, the margins in restaurants are razor thin. Margins in groceries are razor thin. So if you're going from 25% to 75%, you're going, yay, but 75% meaning you're down 25% still doesn't pay all the bills. And I do agree that we have to balance the paycheck not to work, whether it's from the state combined with the federal, because there's a couple other factors. One is health and safety. There are some people that still don't feel comfortable going to work because of COVID. And the decision is pretty easy for that individual that I'd rather stay at home, collect a paycheck, and not have to wear a mask or a double mask, or in our cases, a mask and a face shield. You know, so there's that. We've also lost, whether it's retail and I think hospitality, and I think I'm combining the two, which is okay, but I'm not a retail expert. You know, we've lost jobs permanently to warehouse, transportation, grocery stores. People have migrated from restaurants, hospitality, and retail into other sectors. And then the last thing I would add is that it's just not getting someone to work. It's how much can you afford to get that person to work without blowing up your business model. And, you know, soon we'll be at $15 minimum wage. And I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago it was $11. So that type of incremental increases when you're really struggling, you know, is very challenging, you know, and I'm not saying people shouldn't make a livable wage. I don't want anybody to misinterpret me, but it has to be done in a manner that is very controlled and adaptable for the businesses, because everybody will just raise prices and here comes inflation.
Yeah, you've raised some really important points. To continue the discussion, Supervisor Barger has the next question as well. In what way will the federal funding the county receive be used in long-term supportive ways for retail and restaurants in gaining momentum to sustain their businesses?
So I want to preface my answer with, I'm one of five, so this is what I'm going to be advocating for, and I will continue to advocate for. And I've been working with the CEO to ensure that at least my vision is seen out there as it relates to the federal dollars. As part of the American Rescue Plan Act, we're going to receive $1.9 billion in direct funding, $1.9 billion. In our most recent budget, I advocated for the county to push out our federal funding to local businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic. I've asked that we provide fee or tax waivers for businesses who are not allowed to open under the restrictions in the public health orders, because we still in the county are not completely aligned with the state, which is a whole nother discussion that I think we need to have as it relates to providing clarity for our businesses. I've also asked for funding assistance to our local chambers of commerce to assist businesses with membership and renewal fees to pay back rent, something that Mike alluded to in terms of fixed cost, and to help fund the local shops support our small businesses campaign. Because we have to recognize that many of these industries still have to pay their rent and yet are trying to get back up on their feet. And so we want to assist in any way we can, especially on the rent side. One of the programs already funded through the American Rescue Plan is a restaurant revitalization fund. This program provides restaurants with funding equal to their pandemic-related revenue loss up to $10 million per business and no more than $5 million per physical location. In addition, the county has partnered with the LISC LA to deploy funding known as our Keep Our Shops on the Block grant. This effort is going to provide $10,000 grants, and they'll be provided to personal care and retail businesses. And so, you know, these are small little steps, but again, I want all the chambers, especially your chamber, to advocate for what you see is needed in your community. Because if you all don't, I can guarantee you there are many that are going to be standing in line for this 1.9 billion, in addition to the 1.4 billion the city of LA got.
Thank you,
We will do
Supervisor. And I was about to say, Nancy, I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, because it's a good opening for you.
Well, we have been advocating since the beginning of COVID, and we will definitely take advantage of that opportunity to help all of our businesses. You know, we have been a leader in the whole Safe Small Business movement since March 19th, 2020, and we're proud to continue that and help our business community recover and survive for the future.
Great, thank you. It sounds like we have some work to do. I'd like to go on to our next question, and that is for Mike. And it's basically, over the past year, what have been the greatest challenges for Norms and the restaurant industry in general? And I know you've touched on that. So if you could elaborate further on what the challenges were and go into a little more detail for us.
Well, I think the biggest challenge, as I mentioned, was the unpredictability of the future. We're used to having sales figures and data and sales per person and holiday sales, and you get trends that allow you to predict staffing, food supply chain management, et cetera. But the unpredictability was probably the biggest burden that I've seen in my 40 years, where you didn't really know. I'm an East Coast kid, and we knew when the snowstorm was coming and how to tap down the business for a day or two, et cetera. I've done business down in the South in Florida, and when there was other acts of God that happened, it somewhat predictable. But the unpredictability forced us all as managers, and you can pick any segment you want, to become adaptable. So chains that weren't doing, restaurants that weren't doing takeout delivery, built an off-premise platform. And we have breakfast, but now we have breakfast sandwiches and burritos and things that are portable that help us compete. As well as four delivery sites. And then we had family meals. So you're adapting constantly to what you think the short-term needs are. The hard part from my perspective is you always have to protect the brand, because you can't do something that's so absurd for the brand. So Norms is a classic diner, comfort food, value. Selling pizza probably, although people like to carry out pizza, wouldn't be a good thing. So I think you have to be true to your brand. And then the other most difficult thing was, I mentioned earlier, was trying to figure out how to keep people safe. If you can't keep your guests and your employees or your team members safe by understanding what to do, and restaurant industry is pretty good at SOP, stand up safety procedures, all that stuff. But it was a moving target, from whether it was the CDC, the federal, the state, the county, the city. There was all these different parameters that were a little confusing, to be honest with you. And that again was very challenging. Lastly, people, I can't mention that enough. It's finding the staff, and being flexible. Our office staff now is probably about 75% remote, certain times of not 100% of their work schedule. But as long as the work gets done, and technology can help us, we can do that, versus similar to what we're doing on this call today, or this Zoom meeting today.
Great, thank you. Our next question goes to Rachel. And this is one of my favorite questions because it affected me on a daily basis. The pandemic has forced most of us to change our shopping behavior from in-person to online. And as the reopening has started, do you think this behavior is going to shift back? And what do you think the trends are going to look like for the future?
So I think online shopping grew and is here to stay. One of the things I thought was interesting is this Black Friday this last year was actually larger than Cyber Monday the year before. More people shopped online on Black Friday than they did on Cyber Monday. So definitely you also see retailers. Part of it is, frankly, it's a supply chain issue as well. It's a logistics issue as well. There's more variety online than there is sometimes in some of the stores, particularly some of the bigger department stores, just because of logistics. So I still think you're gonna see that. I think you're gonna see people continuing to shop online. What I do think will happen though is that, and I'm very hopeful, is that we'll get a return back to people. People still like to shop. They call it retail therapy for a reason. It's not quite the same when you're shopping all the time on your computer as it is being in a boutique or into a small retail establishment in your community, supporting that small business. So I'm also hopeful that we're going to see people, once they feel a little bit, safer going out, which they absolutely should. We're seeing the positivity rate. California leads the nation in the lowest positivity rate. I think that hopefully we'll see people, particularly as we get back into the holiday season, thinking about, I think what you'll see too is what you saw this year is retailers spread out their sales. You're seeing sales lasting longer, because we're not trying to cram stores with consumers like we used to. It's very much trying to keep that steady flow of folks coming in. But I do think that online shopping is here. I think people liked having things delivered to their homes. I think they liked that was, groceries. I had never done online shopping for groceries before until COVID hit. I don't know that I could do it all the time, but there's something to be said when I'm really busy. And granted, eventually, those of us that have been working from home are going to be back at work. We're going to be back in our offices, back, doing that commute if we need to. And so things are going to get busier. And so hopefully we'll see, more of that variety coming back when it comes to that retail experience.
And Rachel, I wanted to comment, one of the things that brought me back to the store was just coincidentally looking at the price of a spray paint on Amazon and looking at the store price, and it was 50% lower in the store. My husband said to me, "My God, I'd forgotten things are cheaper in the stores." So
yeah, and people miss that personal interaction. We haven't had it, right? You've been on Zoom calls for over a year. And I think that that's why I think you're seeing people going back to the restaurants, you're seeing people back into the stores, because they want that interaction. We're still very, personable people for the most part, and we want to have that personal connection. And so you're absolutely right. And you see experiences coming back into the retail establishment. I think you'll see that more and more, thinking outside the box. So I think it's an exciting time for retail. I think you're going to see some changes, but I think the online shopping is still going to be here.
Yes, I think online retail, I agree with you on that, is actually reshaping bricks and mortar retail with the things they have to do. Oh, we just got the bell because I'm taking it too far, and I'm the moderator, so I better move on.
I've been ringing the bell, Cindy. I've been ringing the bell on everyone.
Okay,
and
well,
and also I've been sending you
But
Cindy, I've been sending you multiple messages in the chat on your cell phone.
Okay, and I hadn't seen that. So she said, this is urgent. Have you seen it? Great. Okay, got it. Now, the next question is for Supervisor Barger. June 15th is coming up. The governor has promised to open the state. And as you know, our small businesses have been hit the hardest, many exhausting their life savings. While we're ecstatic to know the state's reopening, with only the mask requirements, they are proceeding with caution, and we are proceeding with caution, as LA County has not always followed the blueprint exactly. So oftentimes they're writing health orders that are stricter than the state. Barring any unforeseen surge in cases, what can businesses expect on June 15th? Now, I know you covered that a little earlier, but perhaps if you have any other further insight, you can share about how the county will mirror the state's regulations or continue to impose additional restrictions.
So, I mean, this is an easy one for me. I've constantly called for the county to align with the state. Mike, you're absolutely right. Confusion when you've got the state, the county, oh, and you've got Long Beach. I don't know if there's a norms in Long Beach. They've got their own public health department, although they tend to do align with us, but it gets very confusing. June 15th, I've asked Dr. Ferrer every time she comes before the board about the June 15th date. I'm going to advocate to align. The good news is Supervisor Hahn is very much in line with my thinking on, and I'm in line with her thinking on the fact that we are going to align and mirror the language of the state. At the very least, our numbers are panning out. We have the top percentage of vaccination in the state. Our numbers are among the lowest as it relates to population. So it's time to reward good behavior, and good behavior starts with rewarding the businesses.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And what I was just reminded is that you have to leave at 5 so that we want to be sure to get all your questions to you. Why don't we move to one of the final prepared questions? And then I think we had a number of audience questions in the chat. So just a reminder, please, audience, go ahead and put your questions in. And then if Supervisor Barger has to leave early, we'll come back to some of the prepared questions for Rachel and Mike and kind of adjust around her schedule, if that's all right with everyone.
Yeah,
so
based on Mike and Rachel's answers, they can answer the question for me, and then I'll just do what they say.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you, Nancy, for sending me that in the chat. Okay, so one final question for you for the prepared questions. You've been very supportive of businesses through the pandemic, and as you reflect on the past year, tell us what you wished you could have changed and what you hope for business in the future.
Well, I've alluded to it, but I'll just make it really clear. And that is the one thing I would change is having more clarity in communicating the health officer orders. The lack of clarity and quite frankly, the lack of consistency was driving not only businesses crazy, it was driving our constituents crazy. For the health order officers to be effective, all levels of government need to speak with one voice. Businesses have been frustrated by the conflicting message between the state and the county. And, not to bash the state, but we would get an announcement from the governor at 11 o'clock about something that was being changed the next day, and we had no idea what was going on. So we were scrambling to make it happen. So my hope for the future is that we as policymakers understand the great strain that this pandemic has put on businesses, and we need to craft solutions that will assist businesses get back on their feet. But again, on June 15th, the lesson I learned is what I'm going to apply. And that is to streamline and be very clear. And, I don't want to have to tell businesses better to ask for forgiveness and permission, because toward the end, that's what I was doing. If there wasn't clarity and I couldn't get a straight answer out of public health, I would tell the business, look at the public health orders, do what you feel is in the best interest of your patrons. And then we'll ask for forgiveness if the health department says that's not the way it's to be interpreted. I mean, that's how frustrating it was getting.
Yeah, I can't imagine this is something you never would have expected. So I'd like to ask. Yeah, I was going to say, Nancy, that was what I was going to ask you. Are you going to read off the questions, Nancy, from the chat?
Yes. Yes. So we have a question for Supervisor Barger regarding the health orders for June 15th. As you know, normally when the health orders come out, it's almost like a business knows on Tuesday and that they're going to open on Thursday or Wednesday. Can we get more than 24 hours notice of what the June 15th regulations will be, obviously based if the state releases them, on how the county is going to follow so our business community can be prepared?
So, it's excellent question. And I'll tell you, here is the behind the scenes of what happens, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we know that June 15th, the governor's announced that he's going to lift the orders. But there may be some things still in play. We in the county, and we're not alone on this, all the counties will learn about it probably on June 14th at 11:55 at night. So we can't write our health orders until we know what the state is going to do. And so what we've done now, and we got criticism, but I'd rather do it this way, is the governor made an announcement that we were going to be able to go to the orange tier on Monday. He announced that on, I think, Friday, but we didn't know he was going to announce it. We were not, and he said we could open on Saturday on the orange tier. We waited till Monday because that's what we were under the assumption we were going to be allowed to do. So that gave us 2 days to get the health order going. So I'm hoping that when I talk about the lessons I learned, I hope the governor learned that communication is a key to everything. So as soon as we get the information, our health orders will be released. And again, with the focus on clarity, but I can't make you any promises because it's going to depend on what the state does. But truly, our turnaround has been literally hours in terms of getting it out there. And if you talk to the businesses, they want, the minute they hear it from the governor, they want to take it and run with it. And it's been very, very difficult to navigate.
So a follow-up to that would be, why does LA County rewrite the health orders when most of the counties in California are just following the blueprint for safe reopening guidelines?
That is an excellent question again, and that is why I push back on our public health officer's order to keep outdoor dining or to close down outdoor dining because there was no science with it. I believe, and I've seen, I think our public health officer has gone to the other extreme because of the population here in LA County. So I have not always been aligned with her, but it takes 3 on this board to put something into play. And I've been on the short end of that stick, advocating for what I felt was what the state was doing, and they have their own public health officer who was making recommendations. So I cannot disagree with you that we were far more restrictive than we needed to be.
And we agree that the restrictions, every county might want to have tougher restrictions. But even if they're a little tougher, why is there such a length, if you look at our website for the county, of how many different appendixes there are? It's very confusing for a business to find where they fall on the newest regulations.
No, again, Anders Corey in my office has probably been the busiest deputy I have because we have businesses calling us trying to get clarity because of confusion. And that is where I truly, literally almost went out to the Burbank Equestrian Center and was going to defy the public health officer to kick me off the grounds when they were starting to do a meet because they couldn't get clarity from the department on what they could and could not do. Magic Mountain, Mike, you talk about Disneyland. Magic Mountain was ready to open on Tuesday morning, and Monday night was told that they were not in compliance. So I said to Magic Mountain, I'll be the first on your ride in the morning and let public health kick me off the roller coaster. You've got to start cracking the whip. So I completely hear your frustration, and I advocate as hard as I can for all of you, and I will make sure that transparency is at play. But this is, I'm one of 5, and I will always stand tall. But on this one, I think that there was this fear of the unknown, and we closed down very quickly, and we did not reopen, and yet our numbers went up. So I feel that science was on my side as it relates to the fact that we were overly cautious when we didn't need to be.
Well, I know we appreciate you and all your staff, and bless Jason for having to put up with so many of my phone calls and emails, and Michelle and everyone else, because I feel like I have a direct line to your office, and I want to say thank you for having such great staff that's been so responsive to our business community.
You do. And Mike, I just have to share with you, Anders moved to California, and with his father, they stopped at the Norms and Needles, California, and that was his welcome to California.
Way to go. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's actually the last question for the supervisor.
It is. So you're welcome to stay on a few more minutes with us, or you're welcome to leave now for your next engagement.
No, and I promise you it's Norm, listen to me, Mike and Rachel, as soon as we get what the state is going to do, and good or bad on the recall is kind of push the envelope. That's why we know June 15th. Everyone says, what's the magic number with June 15th? I don't care. It's June 15th. So we're gonna make sure that we roll it out. And Long Beach has been a good partner with Mayor Garcia, so we'll make sure that we get clarity and consistency in play.
Great.
Wait, I don't know am I frozen?
No.
I have one more question for the supervisor. Okay, so my screen looks like it. What is going to happen October 1st? I've heard this from some of the hotels that they hear that on October 1st, all of the restrictions are going to, because June 15th, they say we're still going to have masking. And if you have an event over 5,000, you can't have events over 5,000, and you have to, for indoor, have the vaccinations, et cetera. But we've heard that on October 1st, there will be no more restrictions at all. Is that true?
We don't know. Dr. Ferrer announced that by the end of July, we should reach herd immunity. I think that we just have to do a wait and see. And if the worst case scenario is that you have to continue to wear masks, but we are reopened as a whole, I'll take wearing masks. So I honestly don't know where the October, that whole, October date came from. But I do know that we're looking at the end of July for herd immunity, which is going to truly be a game changer for LA County, but recognize that's just for LA County. And we are a very, we're a county that's in the middle of Orange, Kern, San Bernardino, Ventura. And so I think that we just need to proceed cautiously, but I don't know about the October date.
Yeah, a bunch of the convention centers across the state have that on their website. So,
well, again, then that means that they're talking to the state. And so that there's something going, this is another example of where I get frustrated with the state. They cut deals on the side and then they let us know late in the game. So if that's the case, I guarantee you that there is something brewing and maybe October will happen.
great. Thank you so much.
Great. Supervisor Barger, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your leadership and thank you for supporting the business community. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rachel, for everything that you all are doing. Feel free to reach out to us. I'll buy you breakfast, Mike, at Norm's.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Great. Now, the rest of you don't leave yet. We're not done. We still have our prepared questions and additional Q&A for our two panelists. So I believe, Mike, we left off with you, and the question that we had for you a little while back was about federal, state, and local governments. They've tried to help small businesses, and in particular, the restaurant industry. Are there any specific programs which you consider to have been particularly helpful? And if so, which ones?
Well, I mean, the two obvious ones for hospitality or restaurants was the PPP last year, which had a tough rollout from my perspective, because of some of the timeline restrictions on, you have to use this money by a certain date, and it has to go to X amount of payroll and maybe a little bit of rent and some occupancy expenses. But the timeline was so squashed and it was a very hectic time. And thank goodness they extended the timeline for the utilization of the funds. But that was a game changer. And now you have the Restaurant Relief Fund out there that is being scrutinized. I would say that if I didn't have a great CFO as well as a sophisticated board, if I was an independent entrepreneur, which I have been, I owned my own restaurants for about 10 years when I was a lot younger. I could just empathize with somebody flying solo on how to get through this paperwork, whether it's with a third-party bank or the government form. So those two funds, the PPP and the Restaurant Relief Fund, were significant. As far as what the government can do is, as we move forward, it's really to allow us to do the things that we do well without a great amount of restrictions and regulations. We have very good health departments in this area that are able, although they're stretched a little bit, they do get to restaurants before the pandemic, and the good restaurants get the A's, and the restaurants that don't do well will get the lower scores. So hold us accountable, but allow us to do within reasonable. There's discussion about with the council member from, I think, Encino, to allow patios to stay open for a period of time through the end of the year, maybe without additional restrictions. And, we bought brand new tents and brand new furniture and heaters and, so we think we did it well, petitions and barriers. But for a small company like Norm's, $250,000 investment, we need a little time to get it back and get the return. So just keep off the restrictions, follow the science. Somebody had mentioned about patio dining restrictions, and it's safer. It's known to be safer. And then I would say is, listen to the listen to all the, I guess, governmental information that I just heard. Listen to businesses' best practice. There's other companies besides Norms that are part of the CRA that have tremendous ideas and thoughts on how these things impact you. Restaurants don't have a on-off switch. So you tell me to shut down. What do I do with the people? What do I do with perishable inventories? How do I figure this out? And then you tell me to open up with short notice. How do I get inventory and how do I get people staffed? And, so I would hope that there's somebody that would go to a panel of business people and look at best practices in different industries. Rachel probably could tutor, half the government officials on
Yeah, you're getting the bell.
how to help out the retail industry. So I think they have to listen.
Great, thank you. We'll get back to you because there'll be a similar question shortly.
Mhm.
Rachel, getting back to retail. Even before the pandemic, retail was struggling and anchor departments were closing and some chains going bankrupt or just going away entirely. From the West Side Pavilion to Horton Plaza, malls are being converted to other uses. Is there a future for indoor malls? And will it look different from what we're accustomed to?
I think it'll look different. I still think there's a future. I think what you're going to see is more experiences in malls. I know there's a mall that is putting in a gym. You'll see gym as it's filling in that department store space, and it's a gym, or a 9 Rounds, which is the boxing gym that they have, or bowling alleys, or other types of things to draw people in. I think you're also going to see retailers thinking outside the box. Some retailers are looking at, being able to come in, and while you're shopping around a Macy's or a Neiman Marcus or one of those types of department stores, you can be, you get a complimentary glass of wine and you can make it an experience and hang out. I think you're seeing restaurants coming into some of these more traditional department stores thinking outside the box. I think that there's kind of a difference you're seeing in retail. You've got your big box stores, which I always look at as kind of your Saturday morning errand stores that you go to when you're running your errands. And then you're going to go maybe to a mall and spend a couple of hours and have that experience there. So I think you're going to still see malls. I think it's going to be different. I think as you see new malls being built, they're outdoor. People, and actually when you think about what happened through COVID, the outdoor malls, those stores were able to stay open because they had a door to the outside. One of the regulations were you had to close if you didn't have an outdoor entrance. So, you're going to see, I think, more of that happening where you have just experiences. You see, bands coming in, you see farmers markets more integrated in the community, but I think they're still going to be here for a while.
Right, so distinguishing themselves from a transaction to an experience. Correct. Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Great. Good, thank you. So I heard the bell, so we'll move back to Mike. Mike, we caught you kind of mid-sentence with the bell ringing before, and there's a follow-up question that's somewhat related to it. And I'd like to just continue on with your thought before, but the question that was listed here was, what can local governments do, like the county, to help small businesses like yours on the road to recovery?
I think everything we heard today was spot on. Trying to be a funnel, trying to cut through the clutter. Have empathy, be pragmatic in terms of how you deal with businesses. The comment that ask forgiveness versus permission, if you don't understand. I mean, I think that's a wink that that there is an individual that clearly understands what it's like to run a business. I just think that's so important. I want to piggyback on what Rachel just said, and I really want to, whoever's listening on this, and I'm seeing some of the chat questions coming through. It really is an experience. The great retailers and the great restaurants, part of their value proposition is just not a product and a price. It's the experience of the service, walking into a jeweler's that knows what they're talking about, whether it's gems or precious metals, walking into a restaurant, having a server understand the food, the experience, the ambiance of the building. So I think the challenge for retailers and for restaurants, we're battling delivery and sitting at home on your couch and pushing a button, and you're paying a premium. And the retailers have the monster, the elephant in the room, the Amazon. So I think the great retailers that know how to do good experiences on a regular basis, I think this is a great opportunity. And unfortunately, there is going to be a purge, whether it's in restaurants or retail. So the strongest, not even the strongest, those who had a little bit more cash, it's not really a matter of being stronger or not, have survived. And there's going to be a lot of vacancies. Office space in Encino is down probably about 35 to 45%. We have to be different in Encino when we open up Encino.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we got the bell again. At this point, I'd like to turn it back to Nancy because we had some great audience questions and she's monitoring the chat, and we'll continue the conversation with you both with some of the audience questions. So Nancy, take it away.
We haven't had a lot of questions in the chat. We have a few, but this is one from Mike that I've got from a few people. Are you still planning to open up a Norms in Northridge on Reseda Boulevard?
All our development that has not been built, like Encino and Rialto, are 100% full throttle. Hopefully, by the time kids get back to school, we're reassessing the entire development plan that we have. We have invested money. Anybody that's driven there, we dropped at our expense the old, was it the Chevys? No, the Acapulco. And we've brought in electrical and stuff. So we have investment in there. We're highly dependent on that university. So I'll be honest with you, it's to be determined in terms of anything that's not prepared and ready to open right now. So we're reassessing the development plan. What Rachel had mentioned is there are opportunities for us to do things in other areas that were not there back in January of 2020, and some great second generations and smaller locations. And so we're reassessing everything right now as far as what our footprint is at this point. So there's a good chance, but I can't commit 100% to anyone.
Well, I'm sure that everyone in Northridge will be excited when it happens. So I'm going to put this question to both Rachel and to Michael, because I think it applies to retail and it applies to restaurants too. And we know that we kind of touched on it earlier about trouble hiring employees. And I know like we've had a lot of our members recently put out for retail, looking for employees, and for restaurants, looking for, dishwashers, servers. Are you able to, so I don't care who goes first, are you able to hire enough employees for your current needs? And do you think you'll be able to get enough employees as we get closer to that reopening date?
No, I think someone put in the chat, I think one of the biggest challenges has been the schools are still closed. I think that's had a huge impact. I think also, we're still not in the same, we're not back to quote unquote normal. And I think Mike said it well. I mean, there's a lot of money flowing out there. I think the best way for California's economy to truly recover is for people to get back to work. And there's a lot of jobs out there. And, there's a lot of good paying jobs that are in the retail and the hospitality sector. And so it is going to be challenging. I think it's going to be challenging until at least probably August, you know, maybe when schools or when people know for sure. I mean, we still don't even know for sure if schools are going back full time. We'll know a little bit more, I think, in June 30th. The bill, the order to allow distance learning has to be renewed at the state level. And we're hearing a lot of state legislators saying they want it to expire. So then school districts will not have an option of distance learning in the fall or late summer. But I think that's had a big impact. So it's going to be challenging. It's tough right now. And we'll have to wait and see. And it's not just in California. I talked to my colleagues in other states, and it's across the country. And really one of the things that truly I fear for is we had a problem with our workforce in the logistics and the supply chain area before COVID even hit. And that's become even worse now. And so that really is the backbone of the entire economy. That's the backbone for every business and restaurant in the state. And if we can't really focus on that, that's going to have major impacts as well.
Correct. Yeah, I know before we go to Mike on that question, and because Mike's going to be talking to the reporter tomorrow too, I spent a long time today talking to a Business Journal reporter just about these issues. And one of the things we talked about was pre-COVID, a lot of these issues existed, but COVID has magnified these issues greatly. That we've had supply chain issues, but now it's multifaceted. It's not just the EDD issue. It's not just that people don't have childcare. It's like Mike said, people are going to get other jobs in other sectors. And now we're being heavily hit by it. And we need to look more at like not the policies and not the politics to get moving forward. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So look for our Business Journal article coming out soon. And then I'm going to throw it over to Mike with that same question. Are you having trouble hiring?
We're short-staffed. We're able to function, I think, reasonably well and take care of the guests. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We haven't opened up Graveyard because we don't have the staff. And I think we'll open up 2 restaurants on Graveyard shift probably within 2 weeks. So that's an indication, but we're not fully staffed almost in any restaurant. And that's both in the front of the house, servers, cashiers, bussers, as well as in the kitchen, the back of the house, mostly the cooks, dishwashers. I think you have to be an employer choice more than ever. You know, when we were at pre-COVID unemployment at 3%, I think in Orange County, and 4% in LA County, you know, it was a bear at that point. And being an employer choice, it's kind of like it's a cliche word, but you have to pay fair. You have to be able to have benefits that are reasonable and not just things that are mandated like sick pay but, you know, in terms of healthcare and the things that are important, you know, help subsidize tuitions and things of that nature. And so now it's more prevalent than ever as far as being an employer choice, but everything costs money. And that's the obstacle is the P&L. I would say one more thing. I've been around a long time and I worked for many independent operators in my younger days, much younger days, before I ended up with Burger Kings and Boston Markets. There's an underground cash market out there that is significant. And if anybody underestimates that there are a bunch of folks getting paid cash and then get subsidized with government funds, it's out there, you know. And for companies like myself, Norms, and, you know, everyone's on payroll and we do things, you know, the right way. I think we try to. It's kind of an obstacle that nobody really talks about. That is an advantage for a small independent versus some of the other folks. So I just want to mention that. And I just think people need to think about that cash market that's out there at times.
Rachel, here's a question for you. You know, the company that bought Westfield, which I can never pronounce properly, Ubo, you know who I mean. You were all, okay, never mind. You know, they're selling Westfield. And what is that going to mean for these malls across the country, and especially here in California?
It's going to mean they're going to have to reinvent themselves. I think someone mentioned Horton Plaza. I think Horton Plaza, I think you're referring the one in San Diego, they're turning it office space. Well, that was a great decision 2 years ago. I don't know if that's a great decision now. I think that you're going to see different ways that people are going to approach it. I think Michael's right. I mean, you've got the online marketplace is growing. It's growing quickly, and it's not just the Amazons. There are other major retailers who are entering into the online marketplace arena. You're going to have more options, I think, in the next 5 years of other huge online marketplaces, third-party marketplaces that you can buy goods from, not just Amazon. So I think retail is changing a lot. You're seeing things though, like retail pharmacies getting into healthcare. You're getting to see, there's really starting to be a merging between retail and so many other sectors, whether it's healthcare, senior care, all kinds of different things. So I think that it'll be interesting to see. I think that, but prior to COVID, there probably was less, the malls were losing a little bit of their charm. I think that might be changing depending on where you live in the state though too. I think it's a very state-driven industry in terms of the malls, but I do think you're going to see reinvention. I think malls are still important to communities. And I think, like I said before, you're going to see more experiences coming in and getting people into the mall. So maybe you get someone into the mall because they want to go bowl, but that gets them in, and then it's up to the retailers then, or the restaurants, to provide that experience and that human contact to keep them coming back and staying. But I think it'll be reinventing itself. And this happens every couple of years. So I think we'll just see what happens.
I think you kind of saw that early on with Irvine Spectrum, where they had the Ferris wheel and all that. It became a very big experience for people to go shopping there.
Yeah.
Very good point. Okay, Michael, this is our last question from the chat, unless someone adds anything else. How do you see restaurant eating habits changing? Will pickup and delivery remain strong? And do you see a lot of people coming back to eat as we start lifting the restrictions?
Similar to retail, what Rachel mentioned, yeah, online ordering, delivery sales, off-premise sales, off-premise catering will be there and will be there to stay. There's going to be a need, whether we're 100% vaccinated or not, because there's a convenience factor. Really, that's really what it's about. But you have to pay a premium. Now, after World War II in Europe, one of the things that in the diary Anne Frank talked about, when they were secluded, they were talking about getting out to the cafes and enjoying a baguette or whatever. There's an urge, restaurants and hospitality and the retail experience is an experience. Restaurants nice, built around food and beverage, usually celebration or an event. And I think there's going to be a need. Now, whether you're Generation X, Z, millennial, baby boomer, it'll be different. And I think that the difficult thing for most services or providers is how to figure out where your brand fits with some of the different demographics, because the baby boomers may be a little more cautious because of health, but have an appetite not to order delivery or to go or go through a drive-through. So that's going to be the fun part, and the challenging part is catering to subcategories within your brand and doing it wisely.
If I could comment, I think Mike hit the nail on the head. I think that you're definitely going to see people, particularly after June 15th, when we move a little bit further past this. I think mentally that date, I think, helps us as a state, like we're all moving together past that date. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I know where I live, you can't get into a restaurant right now because it's busy. People want to sit outside. They want to, they miss talking to the server. To Mike's point, food is such an experience in itself, and to ask what that special is and have them explain it, or go into your favorite restaurant and have that favorite sandwich that doesn't quite taste the same when it's takeout, like just when it comes out of the kitchen. I think you're going to see more and more people wanting to do that and get, especially with the vaccine so readily available. Hopefully we'll see more and more people taking advantage of that.
And I think a good example of that is that I think is still has much more time to recoup. But I think movie theaters, that experience, I know the people that are running iPick, there's not a promotion for them, but it's an experience where they give food, beverage, great sound systems, clean atmosphere. I know people are going to go back to movies instead of playing with that remote all day long and getting Hulu and all that other stuff. That's a lot easier and cheaper. So I really think there's going to be an appetite.
Well, we all want to get out of our workout clothes and actually dress up and go out somewhere and not just sit at home. So I think that'll make a huge difference.
Hey, I'm wearing a new Zoom top. Okay.
I know.
Very excited. Those are the last questions we have in the chat. And I'd like to give it back to Cindy, or actually we could just start if either of you want to start with couple
Right.
closing remarks.
Thank you both for joining us today. And as Nancy mentioned, why don't we start with Mike with closing remarks?
I would just say that I'm very optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I can't give you a timeline, and I'm scared to death about another announcement from someone, to be honest with you. And but I am so optimistic. This vaccine. I think people need to read what immunity means and like understand that there are. You're trying to balance this risk, but I really am very optimistic that. I was in San Francisco and Boston commuting after 9/11. These things are tragic, but this American persona is very resilient, and this is just not from a financial pocket from a restaurant. I have daughters and granddaughters and grandsons and a wife and etc. I want things to be normal for my family and the future of my family too. So I'm really optimistic. I really am.
Great, thank you. Rachel, your closing comments?
No, I agree. I will say there were a couple of probably months or weeks there where I'm like, we're never going to get past this. You're dealing and juggling with so many different orders and the frustration that I would get from particularly small business owners. And my heart just broke for them because I knew that they were trying to do everything they could to keep their doors open, to stay afloat, keep their employees employed. I'm optimistic as well. We've turned a corner. I think that, I'm excited about what's going to happen in the future. And I'm really just thoroughly impressed with the resiliency of particularly our small businesses in California, small and large. I mean, I represent large retail chains as well. And I'm just excited to see what happens. But more importantly, I was excited to see the business community coming together. I worked a lot with the Restaurant Association. Jock Condi and I would be on calls all the time talking about, we partnered where we could on different things. We wrote reopening plans way back when for retail and restaurant. We worked with business properties associations in the shopping malls. We really developed a lot of incredible relationships that I think that will help all businesses going forward with whatever comes our way. And I'm optimistic we can handle that. So thank you. Thank you for including me today too. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you both for joining us. And I'd like to turn it back now to Josh for some closing comments and remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. And a big thank you to all of our contributors and guests, Supervisor Kathy Barger, Mike Kalana, Rachel Michelin, as well as our moderator. Thank you, Cindy. You guys have been great and your insight has been extremely appreciated. Also like to thank everybody's contribution in the chats. Also want to express the Chamber's appreciation to our sponsors, California Lutheran University and SoCal Gas, for making today's Policy on Tap possible. Our next Policy on Tap event will take place on July 13th to discuss the entertainment industry and how the pandemic has changed how we consume and produce entertainment these days. Registration for the July Policy on Tap is available in the chat or on our Chamber's website. So a big thank you for everybody again for your participation, and have a great rest of the evening. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for being here. And we'll be here for a few minutes if anyone wants to ask any questions.
Do you want us to stay on or?
Well, I just know if anyone else has any questions.